Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and following the resignation of two junior ministers and a small reshuffle within the Conservative Party, things have gone completely up the spout once again, and I think the title of this video, and possibly based on evidence we'll see later on, even Rishi Sunak thinks he isn't up for the job of Prime Minister. Bear this in mind, ladies and gentlemen, because remember, as things stand, the Conservative Party, they only need two more people to sign a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister for there to be a leadership challenge to be ignited. And despite the fact that a couple of days ago, the Daily Mail would like you to believe that any accusations of a coup inside the Conservative Party to have Penny Mordaunt emerge as the new leader, either before or as the new Prime Minister, we'll have to wait and see, because you can't be telling me that in the wake of such things like this, people are going to look at the Prime Minister as anything more than, once again, just like Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak will go down as the Prime Minister who severely overestimated his authority and severely underestimated his quarry. Something that has been a testament to the Conservative Party for years, decades for that matter. And, well, yeah, possibly even ever since the tenure of Clement Attlee. And bear in mind, Clement Attlee was perhaps the greatest prime minister this country ever had, who was Labour and came off quick question. Clement Attlee was after Churchill and Chamberlain, but I'm not entirely sure if he was before Anthony Eden and Harold Macmillan, Maguire, it's like I think it's like early 50s or something like that. So sort of, I think, it might have been after Churchill's second tenure as Prime Minister. But here we go to the point.
Hi guys, my god, this is getting really tedious. So it has emerged from people close to the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, two things. First, that he didn't really know that people didn't like him, which reinforces the point that he has surrounded himself by yes men and women who probably just want to further their careers.
Yep.
And second, that Rishi Sunak himself may think he's not the best person for the job. Here Tim Montgomery from the influential Conservative Home told Times Radio about what may be going on within the confines of both Number 10 and the Prime Minister's head. And it's all a bit tedious.
It was 2 weeks ago, John, I came on here and said that I thought it was time for Rishi to go, and partly because he wasn't good at politics. And part of the reason why I came to that conclusion is it's not just about Rishi, it's about the operation he's presiding over, or is allowed to preside over. And we've had this controversy in the last 24 hours with this ridiculous ad about London, which some of the listeners may not have seen, but it's very sort of spooky, very dark. It's sort of very Trumpian, actually, in its sort of catastrophe in Britain, sort of... It's got this weird American voiceover.
Yeah.
And they've had to withdraw it today.
This isn't something that is just lost on the Conservatives. This is something that UKIP, the Brexit Party, and the Reform Party all stink of, except in a slightly more extremist sort of way. If you want further information on this, I would advise you to check out my video about me reading the Reform Party's policies, because they make for some very, very slightly insidious reading, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Because there's a scene of Penn Station in New York rather than in London.
People running around in Penn Station in a panic or something.
And now Rachel has a theory that maybe they wanted it to be so controversial that we would talk about it, because if you have a vanilla ad, and I kind of accept that.
And we are talking about it.
And we are talking about it. But I think Tory MPs it's just another example, and there's there's two or three almost every week of this operation just not functioning at a basic level.
Yeah.
And I've had 2 weeks to think about me coming on this program. I wasn't exactly prepared to say what I did 2 weeks ago, but everything that's happened since, the people I've spoken to, it confirms me that I'm probably right. Anyone who's certain about changing the Prime Minister again, probably should be certified. But I think definitely on balance, I think it's the Conservative Party are going to take the gamble. And someone who should know what they're talking about told me today they didn't agree with me that it was the right call to make. But they said, I tell you, one person who's quite sympathetic to your view is the Prime Minister himself. Not that he wants to go, but apparently he's openly saying to advisors in Downing Street, "What am I not very good at this? Why isn't anything happening?" And
when a Prime Minister actually starts to say, hang on a minute, am I actually doing any good at all? When somebody is so completely mediocre at what they do, actually has to say these things. I mean, I suppose I should be maybe a bit more respectful of the fact that Rishi Sunak has openly said this. We know fine well he's made just a giant ass out of himself for saying this. But at the same time, at least he's honest. But at the same time, again, he knows. He knows deep down, he knows that, nothing's working. People don't like him. And that, well, the writing's on the wall. Because look at what they've done to the NHS. Look at what they've done to workers, to migrants. Look at what they've done to education. Look at what they've done to transport. They decided to take money from HS2 and just redistribute it, sprinkle it over London. Like, are you kidding me? That's like, it's, but again, well, yeah, Rishi Sunak, you're not doing a good job. Like, when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer, they have these little back and forth talks at a thing called Prime Minister's Questions. I wonder if it's ever occurred to Rishi Sunak at one point that maybe there are some things that people are angry with Rishi Sunak over. There are some things that Rishi Sunak should have been listening to. Rishi Sunak shouldn't have just been sticking his head in the sand saying, no, everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. So let's continue.
And he's a good man, Rishi Sunak. He's not...
Oh my goodness. Once again, this is just really tedious. Like, why don't they actually do something? Why is it always gimmicks? Why is it always, let's try and come up with a new gimmick to convince the public that we're actually doing something, instead of...
I will one day talk about the actual history of Clement Attlee, because something you're going to realise, ladies and gentlemen, is that Clement Attlee was not a gimmick. He wasn't a look at me kind of Prime Minister. For some of those who are very interested to know, is that when Clement Attlee died, he had a very, very private funeral specifically allocated to his friends and family. The contrast between that to the likes of Churchill and the likes of Thatcher, well, some may argue that maybe there is a certain lenience towards Churchill. He wasn't a terribly great Prime Minister, even though people like to pretend he is, because he was the Prime Minister during the time of the war. But then again, so was David Lloyd George. He was the Prime Minister during the First World War. Why are there no statues erected to him? Questions.
Actually doing something. Because if you actually did something, you may actually be able to hold on to a few votes. But the Tories seem to be determined, no, we're not actually going to do the work. What we're going to do is pretend. What we're going to do is run ads against the Labour Party. What we're going to do is mess about. Honestly, I'm not trying to give advice to Rishi Sunak, but if I was giving him advice, I'd say actually introduce a policy that will benefit ordinary people. But don't make it a promise that requires you becoming Prime Minister. Actually do something today. Because if you do something today and people see it...
I know, again, I shouldn't be interrupting in this much, but once again, something that the Conservative Party have never quite seemed to understand is the effects of good public relations. In fact, to be honest, I'm not even sure that there is such a thing as an ethics or morality advisor, or even someone whoever's in charge of PR. Clearly, it must be like that one meme from SpongeBob where Patrick's just holding a hammer and he's got a plank nailed to his head. Because let me tell you how you handle, this is how exactly you do good PR, ladies and gentlemen. You just do things. You do things in public. You make sure nobody looks at you. You do them. You do a bit of charity work. You do something that other people are not going to criticize you. Just do something for the sake of doing something that's good, that benefits other people. That is the first big step you can do, ladies and gentlemen, towards good public relations. Doing something completely selfless for the public, for the interest of common working class people. That's the very first thing you should be doing. And you know what? There's an organization in my village that organizes litter pickering, literally all over the village, just to keep the place tidy. They don't get paid for what they do, and well, why doesn't Rishi Sunak do something like this? You may say that's beneath him, but then again, how does Rishi Sunak begin to build up his image, whatever it may be at this point, if people don't take a shine to him? Because one thing that needs to be illustrated once again, ladies and gentlemen, is that politics is sort of like a popularity contest, but then begs the question is that when you're not popular, then who's going to vote for you? Because when your policies don't wash and your personality doesn't wash and your economics don't wash because they don't benefit the people you are meant to represent, well, you could say, well, the irony of that is that Rishi Sunak represents his small team of yes men and not to the millions of working class people that also inhabit this country. Well, I think I've just answered my own question, is that I don't really think Rishi Sunak would do things to actually benefit the interest of normal people, because what concept or what does the Conservative Party, genuinely for that matter, actually know about working class life or about poverty? They must know poverty exists, but I think it only exists in terms of a word. It doesn't actually exist in their minds as reality. You tell me, ladies and gentlemen.
And it actually benefits people, then they'd be less likely to vote for the Labour Party. I keep saying this. It's a referendum on the incumbent. Now, I think there's very little...
I call it the tyranny of the majority, only because I picked it out as a reference in one of my books about human rights. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, I know I've said this before in like many previous videos, is that fear of the mob is a superstitious fear and exists by thinking that there was be something incredibly dangerous by giving the lower classes time to read or improve their minds. The mob is in fact loose now, and it's in the shape of Conservative MPs who believe that any liberty or privilege given to the poor is a threat to every person's liberty.
So the Rishi Sunak could do to hold on to his power, but try something, but not these gimmicks. So what they're talking about was an ad, some sort of spooky ad where, well, if you vote for the Labour Party, you'll end up with some disaster or something, and they included a clip from the United States. So this is a massive mistake by somebody on the communications end of the Conservative Party. But once again, they're focusing on these gimmicks instead of actually doing something. Put money in people's pockets, real money. A UBI, for example, or something. Do something and you have a chance of holding on to power. What they're doing at the moment instead is not going to help them. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think.
I mean, I would say that's basically all she wrote, because what chance do the Conservatives have right now by suggesting that, I mean, it's best summarized literally in this comment right here. Blair was successful but unpopular. Sunak is a failure and unpopular. And, well, thank God somebody said this, because that's the important thing as well, is that people are led to believe that Gordon Brown was a failure because he wasn't popular. Actually, Gordon Brown was actually and still is a very influential politician. And, well, just take a look at the prime ministers we've had since we've had Gordon Brown. David Cameron, or Lord Cameron as he's now referred to as, a man who will go down in history because he tried to shag a dead pig and led this country through a wave after wave of austerity, cutting benefits for ordinary working people like you and me. And he and his mate George Osborne basically opened the doors and floodgates towards leading us into a referendum that would have us leave the European Union. And rather than actually taking any accountability or trying to work on it, David Cameron fled literally within a week after we agreed to leave the European Union. I mean, I didn't agree to it. I voted to stay, but there you are. That's just how that is. And because nobody else wanted to take responsibility at the time, it fell into the hands of Theresa May. Theresa May, who failed time and time again to actually show up for live debates when she held a snap general election, even after she said she wouldn't. And still, she somehow came out of this until her any steam that she had at her tender age completely dried up, and then we got Boris Johnson. And people thought that he was fantastic for the job, and all evidence to this very day has suggested one thing and one thing only, is that Boris Johnson topples every single prime minister when it comes to being described as the worst of all time, because he is worse than David Cameron, worse than Neville Chamberlain, worse than Lord North, and I think that, well, we could say even worse than Liz Truss. The only good thing I can say about Liz Truss's tenure, despite the fact that she is perhaps the most delusional prime minister I've ever seen in my life, her tenure was decidedly incredibly short. And yet she wrought havoc on this country in such a short amount of time. And now we have Rishi Sunak. Unpopular, unmotivated, utterly clueless, and thinks that the only way to actually win round people is through selective propaganda. Not through policies, not through any things that would make a politician actually quite successful and influential and popular with the masses, not with the small congregation that tell him, "You're doing a great job, Prime Minister. We are all going to say yes, because if you say no, you're going to fire us all." Well, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. That is the state in which we are at right now. And unfortunately, if that's sometimes, again, in the words of the famous song, the public wants what the public gets. If you're trying to tell me this is what you want, this is what you think, this is the standard that you think is what we need, and these are the people you're going to trust, well, good luck to you, ladies and gentlemen. I've never voted for any of them, and I'm not going to vote for them anytime soon, because, well, and it's for the reasons why a lot of people from the very far right don't like me very much, and they probably won't like Robespierre very much, is because we're too intelligent. We see far too clearly. We don't have a muddied conscience. We know perfectly well what bullshit sounds and looks like. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. Prove me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Prove to me that there's something in Rishi Sunak. Prove to me that there's something about his policies or anything resembling the right side of the political spectrum. Tell me what's there to vote for, and tell me why I should vote for them. Go ahead, try and convince me, because whether you like it or not, they need my votes as well. They need my support. They need my backing. And if you're not willing to actually put up a fight to secure people's votes, the things that actually get people into power, then why even bother becoming a politician in the first place? Think about it seriously. And I'll see all of you guys again next time. Take care. And by the way, earlier before when I said about Rishi Sunak doing things for charity, do you remember back when he tried to feed the homeless in a soup kitchen, and he asked a homeless man what business he owned was? Well, Rishi Sunak can't even be trusted to do that properly. There we are.